everybody, and welcome back to the Catch My Drift project. I'd like to thank you all for attending tonight, although I would have much rather have done this in person, but unfortunately we can't do that. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sophie and I'm the Catch My Drift project officer, and I worked on the project last year. So last year was actually our development phase where we were awarded £90,000 from the National Lottery Heritage I'd like to say a massive thank you to everybody who supported us last year, because we wouldn't have gotten this far without them. We had 57 volunteers contribute 1,331 hours. They recorded 438 species, 276 were new records for the site, and we also engaged with 748 people. And all of that means that we can now continue the development of East Chevington. So basically the rest of this event is now to tell you what we have got planned for the next 3 years.
East Chevington was originally a drift mine, and this stone marks the historic entrance. The drift mine was in operation between 1882 and 1962, and many of the miners and their families lived on site. Following the closure of the mine, many of them were relocated to nearby Hadston and Red Row. The site then became an open cast coal mine, which was in operation for 12 years and closed in 1994. The trust was then given the site in 2003. Talking to local residents and visitors, there's a clear, strong affinity and emotive connection between people and the history of the site, and so highlighting the heritage of East Chevington is going to be a major aim of the Catch My Drift project. The Catch My Drift project aims to deliver long-term land and habitat improvements for the people and wildlife that use East Chevington Nature Reserve. Thorough ecological surveys will also maintain and build species records for the site. Improving access and interpretation and improving community engagement of the site are also key aims of the project. East Chevington is the third largest reserve owned by Northumberland Wildlife Trust, covering 185 hectares. Located just south of the Druridge Bay Country Park, it forms a crucial part of the Druridge Bay living landscape. Cresswell Pond to the south and Druridge Pool to the south, and Hawksey Nature Reserve to the north, it forms a valuable wildlife corridor of protected reserves, which is increasingly important under the context of climate change and habitat fragmentation. There's also key habitats named in the Northumberland Biodiversity Action Plan, meaning that effective conservation is crucial for wildlife, now and in the future. Thanks to National Lottery Heritage funding, we've also been able to fund 3 traineeships, one for each year of the project, which is where I come in. I didn't say hi earlier, so hi, I'm Chloe and I'm this year's Catch My Drift project trainee. The trainee roles provide new graduates an opportunity to gain crucial experience in the conservation sector. My role for this year will be assisting with all aspects of the project, from ecological surveys and practical conservation tasks to leading volunteer and community engagement events. I'm particularly looking forward to improving my practical skills doing my brush cutter and chainsaw training, expanding my knowledge of surveys and improving my ID. The conservation sector is notoriously difficult, and so to gain experience I couldn't gain at university is really valuable, and I'm really looking forward to the year ahead.
One of the habitats we are aiming to improve in over the next 3 years are our 16 hectares of fragmented reed beds. Reed beds are listed as an extremely uncommon habitat in the Northumberland Biodiversity Action Plan, and ours here is one of the largest complexes in the county. Our reed beds here support a variety of wildlife, especially to breed, including the Schedule 1 listed marsh area, which first bred here in 2009. This site also held the first record in Northumberland for bearded tits breeding in 1999, and they have been spotted over the last 2 years to be breeding again. We also hope to support bittern breeding in the future as climate change pushes species relying on the reed beds. beds down south further northwards. Reed beds are a mid-successional vegetation, which means if left to their own devices, they will silt up, develop scrub and eventually turn into woodland carp. To arrest this development, we must be able to get into the reed beds and reduce its density and increase its complexity. However, the sluice structures that were put in place after the open cast restoration are no longer functional, so we'll be working with Seymour Civil Engineers to replace these structures and reinstate drainage ditches so we can gain more control. This will allow us to reduce the carp developing on the south lake and increase our reed bed development on the north lake. Species-rich grassland has declined drastically in the last century and now makes up less than 1% of UK land cover. This loss and fragmentation of habitat has been the key driver in the decline of pollinating insects and birds, and lowland meadows are now a key habitat in the UK Biodiversity Action Plan. This project has the opportunity to create 20 hectares of large blocks of wildflower meadows such as this one, which we sowed a few weeks ago with a group of volunteers using a local seed mix from a farm up in Thropton. Next year we hopefully will see yellow brattle and eyebright appearing, with species such as oxeye daisy and red clover developing over the next few years. It can take up to 10 years for a wildflower meadow to become fully established, but in the meantime we'll be managing these using a conservation scheme called FlexiGrade, which uses native sheep and cattle to graze areas, keeping grass swards down over winter, allowing wildflower seeds to pop up in spring. I am stood in one of our woodlands. In fact, we have 30 hectares of woodlands all over the East Chevington Reserve, and this one has a public footpath running through it. Now, as you can see, I'm surrounded by Scots pine, and this is a result of the open cast mining restoration. So what the idea was is plant fast growing species in straight lines to give the illusion of a good woodland. Now, although Scots pine are beneficial to some species, they don't provide a huge amount of biodiversity. We recently cleared and thinned another part of the woodland on the site, and last year we decided to do survey comparisons. Now, what we found were in the areas where we had thinned, we found more mammals, more ground flora and more evidence of birds of prey, showing that we do need to kind of create a better biodiversity in the rest of our woodlands. So the idea over the next 3 years is to thin 5 hectares of the woodland and increase species diversity by planting native woodland flora.
An important aspect of the Catch My Drift project is to create a reserve that can be enjoyed by all. It will be a site for education, personal well-being and connection to nature, which is something a lot of people have grown to appreciate over lockdown. Improvements to footpaths and gates will be instrumental in improving the access to East Chevington Nature Reserve, and new interpretation across the reserve, including maps, information boards and interactive panels for children, will improve education of the site and increase community engagement with East Chevington. Over the next 3 years, the bird hides will be renovated by Biodiversity, an architectural company specialising in wildlife hide designs, and we ran public consultations last year and took your advice in tailoring these to create useful and comfortable spaces for everyone. All of Biotope's designs aim to create wildlife watching areas for all. The renovations on 3 of our hides will create different opportunities for viewing nature, increasing the comfort to allow for longer viewing times and appeal to a wider audience. The south hide will be turning into a sheltered screen which will protect users from the elements whilst giving a more open wildlife watching experience whilst still concealing them from wildlife. There are plans for deep shelves for scope grips and tiered seating for elevated viewing. The materials used will include fire-treated timber battens in a hit and miss arrangement. This softens the look of the hide, but will also improve acoustics, adds to the thermal mass, and most importantly, diffuses the human silhouette. The L-shaped hide, which is the largest on the reserve, has been designed to have a semi-sheltered outdoor space, which is ideal for interpretation and reflection. Gabions will increase the thermal mass, and timber battens will be used in the same way as the south hide. There are plans to investigate using rubber mats from the floors, which will help to improve acoustics, reducing the echo. Inside, the windows will be increased in size by combining several of the existing windows to create a panoramic view. The surrounding windows will be extra deep to limit rain entering and will also allow scope clamps. The hide in the southeast corner was originally going to be left, but after consultation it was decided to create it into a sky deck, which will allow for another new wildlife watching experience, providing views over the reed beds as they Hosting volunteer and community engagement events contribute to helping the local community and wider public reconnect with nature and value East Chevington Nature Reserve. We're going to be running volunteer events to do practical tasks such as this wildflower sowing session we're doing today, along with ecological survey tasks such as small mammal trapping, camera trapping, hedgehog surveys and botany surveys. We also plan to host community engagement events such as wildlife walks and talks to local groups and schools, which will raise the profile of the site locally and allow outreach to areas of society which might not have access to wildlife conservation usually. It'll also help increase public awareness of East Chevington Nature Reserve. All of the engagement and records we make on our site help us to tailor the management for future plans.
Thank you all again for tuning in tonight. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did making it. If you have any questions that we haven't been able to answer, please do get in contact. Email us at catchmydrift@northwt.org.uk, and if you see us on site, please stop and say hello and we'll happily have a chat to you about anything you'd like to.